The Watership Down podcast is intended for listeners who are familiar with the plot. There will be spoilers. This episode is scripted, recorded, edited and narrated by Newell Fisher. Hello, and welcome to the Watership Down podcast episode 158, which by sheer coincidence is being recorded on International Women's Day, in which we will be looking at season 3, episode 6 of the TV series and episode 32 of the series overall, My Fair Gull. First though, Eric Steps left a comment on YouTube after last week's episode confirming that the German title for the episode, Woundwort in a Trap, has no double meaning, which makes that alternative title not very good in my opinion, as it refers to a brief event right at the end. Thank you for the clarification, Eric. Thinking about this though, some of the original episode titles aren't any better, this week's being a good example. It is a play on the phrase My Fair Lady, which was the title of a 1956 film in which a working-class London woman is trained to behave like a lady, because of course this makes her a better person. The irony of this being International Women's Day is not lost on me. Next, last week I stated that Woundwort's pretend name in Redstone is Wheatstock. However, I've also seen this written down as Wheatstalk. It may be that the North American accents of the Redstone rabbits led me to mishear. However, in upcoming episodes his name seems to be clearly pronounced in both ways, so I'm not really sure which it is. I will stick with Wheatstock for consistency. Incidentally, when I refer to things such as accents as North American, that is intended as a shortcut for something from the United States or Canada. I just hope that my doing so doesn't cause any offence. For all I know, the accents of the Redstone rabbits may be very obviously Canadian, as this is a Canadian production. Let me know in the YouTube comments. I've had an email from a listener called Paul Ireland in which he draws a parallel between Watership Down and a current political situation in the world that reminded me of the statement, and I think this was made by Richard Adams himself, that while he asserted Watership Down was not an allegory, the story could be seen as having an applicability to various conflicts and political situations throughout history. I have to be aware that those listening to this come from many places in the world and as a result will have many different views of world events, and I do try to be sensitive to this. This is why I tried to be so cautious in episode 136 on Efrafa. However, I do wonder if there might be value in making an episode at some point that does focus on the specific allegories that people draw from Watership Down. As long as they are all given equal consideration, that should be okay. Please let me know what you think, and in particular, let me know what the story means to you in terms of such allegories. Anyway, let's check in on Redstone Warren again. I'm sure everything's fine. TV series Season 3 Episode 6 My Fair Gull. The 32nd episode of the Watership Down TV series was first broadcast in Canada on the 16th of October 2001. It was written by Mary Crawford and Alan Templeton, and its German title was Kihar's Departure, which was a better title I think. There will be a link to the episode in the notes. This episode begins with a brief recap of Woundwort and Vervaine's arrival at Redstone Warren, with a voiceover by Woundwort himself. Overall, this episode consists of two elements. The first is the grim account of Woundwort's takeover of Redstone, having laid the groundwork in last week's episode. But in order to provide some comic relief, this is interspersed with the tale of Kihar's arrival back on Watership Down with his new partner, who is, how can I put this, a bit of a British and English cliché. First though, we're back at Redstone, and Woundwort is boasting about defeating a fox in front of a large group of the Warrens' rabbits, all of whom loudly cheer their new hero. Marigold, though, is less enthusiastic, which Vervaine, playing his role as second in command perfectly, notices. She talks to the chief rabbit, Hickory, telling him that the fox was clearly chased away by human fox hunters, and that Woundwort had no fresh signs of a fight on him. But Hickory is enthralled to Woundwort, telling her that he has made him the chief he has now become. If she doesn't like it, she can find a new mate. Talking of new mates, the end of their conversation is immediately followed by Kihar's cry as we see him flying with a female gull. She is lighter in colour than him, with a shock of feathers on her head implying a human woman's hair, and her accent is nothing like the Eastern European seagulls we met on the Dorset coast in Season 2, Episode 4. Her accent is, I think, supposed to be from London at around the time the song Maybe It's Because I'm a Londoner was popular, so around the 1940s. Apparently, they met on a big pile of rubbish, which Kihar calls garbage for the benefit of a North American audience. She fell for him when she saw him on a load of potato peelings. So romantic. Clearly, Kihar has been looking elsewhere for love and has found himself a city gull. She seems a lot more friendly than Katerina, but also a lot more annoying. Meanwhile, on Watership Down, a hero's feast is being prepared after the discovery that Campion is still alive. Hazel has his doubts about it, as Campion isn't even there, but Primrose says they need a celebration after all the Warren has been through. At Redstone, Hickory Ra is putting his Owsla through their paces as Woundwort and Vervain, or rather Wheatstock and Chaff, look on. Woundwort is unimpressed, and privately calls them pathetic. He needs an army that can defeat Hazel's Warren, but this lot couldn't fight a war with a flock of pigeons. Marigold, approaching them from behind, overhears Wheatstock use the word war and asks him why he would want to fight a war. He says that as captain of Owsla, he needs to be ready for anything. His promotion is news to her, and her surprise is met with patronising dismissal by Chaff. Once alone, Woundwort tells Vervain they may need to dispose of Marigold and to watch her. She is going to be trouble. We hear Kihar's cry again as the new couple arrive on Watership Down. His new mate is called Gluck, and, seeing no rabbits above ground, he leads her into the warren. She isn't keen on the idea of living underground, as it don't seem natural, but it's good enough for her Kihar, so she will give it a try. In the honeycomb, a large pile of food has been made for the feast. Hazel makes a speech about honouring Campion. Meanwhile, Kihar and Gluck arrive, and seeing the feast, Kihar assumes it is to honour them. The only thing they have forgotten is fish. Gluck says not to worry. City gulls will try anything, and with that she flies onto the top of the feast pile, much to the shock of the assembled rabbits, and begins feeding. Kihar introduces her as Gluck. Hawkbit says she certainly is, which earns him a dig in the ribs from Primrose. Kihar says she is wonderful. Hazel repeats the word, without conviction. Later, Hannah is woken suddenly by Gluck calling for Kihar. Seeing the two gulls heading for the farm to raid rubbish, she asks why she isn't coming along, but Kihar says his days are ruled by love now. The other rabbits have been woken, and Hazel asks what that sound was. Hawkbit says it sounded like a herd of cats in a mill pond. It was the sound of true love, according to Hannah. Bigwig says he'll try to avoid that then, which is ironic. Watch this space. At Redstone Warren, things have been changing rapidly. Chaff, or rather Vervain, accosts Marigold above ground with two members of the new Redstone Owsla. He tells her she is not scheduled to Silflay at this time. When she ignores them, Chaff insists, and Marigold, knocking him aside, results in the Owsla grabbing her. One of them says it is for the good of the Warren. Marigold goes underground, where she finds Hickory considering requests from members of the Warren with Wheatstock, or rather Woundwort, standing alongside him and subtly indicating the answers he should give, which seem to be no in most cases. She asks to speak to Hickory in private, but he says there's nothing Wheatstock cannot hear. She says they left Cowslip's Warren in order to be free, but Hickory insists they have to be disciplined. At least this is what Wheatstock says. When she questions his right to make rules for the rest of them, she is reminded that it was Wheatstock who stopped the hoodoo and got them food. He has also saved them from Elil and the man with the thunderstick. After the cheers for Wheatstock have died down, Marigold questions what kind of rabbit would know about traps and humans. They don't know where Wheatstock even came from, and he is destroying Redstone. At this point, Wheatstock intervenes and orders Marigold confined to her quarters. Hickory weakly agrees. And so back to the comic relief. On Watership Down, Gluck the Gull is giving Bigwig and others the benefit of her experience. We are treated to a montage of her holding forth on gull-based wisdom on such subjects as nest building and the acquisition of fish guts, until Bigwig finally snaps and shouts at her to stuff a carrot in it. This only causes momentary awkwardness before she carries on after he apologises. Bigwig is forced to run away. Dandelion observes that Gluck seems to have taken to Bigwig. Hawkbit's response is poor sod, which is very low-level British profanity, but still surprising in a children's animation. Meanwhile, Blackberry is asking Fiver if he can sense anything about Campion. Fiver sits on a rocky outcrop with a far view as he tries to get any sense of what is happening in the wider world, but he feels nothing. Fiver speculates that Campion's destiny may be hidden in the shadow of the black rabbit. Blackberry thanks him for trying and pats him on the back. The second she does this, Fiver has a long and vivid vision. It begins with the declaration, "Into the valley of fire you both shall go. If you live to escape, only Frith can know." This is followed by a scene from the future that Fiver sees. A close-up of his terrified eye becomes a murky moon in a foggy sky. There is what looks like a fire beacon. We see Campion, seemingly cornered by two rabbits in a valley, the base of which is on fire. We see Blackberry looking up in fear at the dreadful face of Woundwort, lit by the fire beneath him. As we see the shadows of the two rabbits apparently attacking Campion, these shadows are wreathed in swirling smoke, out of which Woundwort's face looms menacingly. Fiver collapses as his vision ends. Blackberry asks what this could mean, but Fiver just responds that what he saw looked like a nightmare at world's end. At Redstone, we see Woundwort having disturbed sleep. We hear Fiver's voice saying, "I see the past, I see the future, and I see your dark heart, Woundwort." He is awoken by Vervain, who tells him Hickory has called a meeting before being thrown out of Woundwort's burrow. Woundwort says he now knows how Hazel beat them at every turn. It was Fiver's visions. Fiver must die. This is new. Fiver's powers have never before encroached on another's mind in this way, and Woundwort has never before shown any interest in such powers, but now he very much is. And he is right to, for such powers will become ever more crucial as Season 3 reaches its end. Turning to the business in hand, Vervain says he thinks Marigold may have poisoned Hickory against them. Woundwort says in that case the pretense will end. He will destroy whatever stands in his way. Meanwhile, Hickory meets with the confined Marigold. He says he has thought about what she said about the kind of rabbit Wheatstock is. He asks her to come and see. At the meeting place, it looks as if Hickory is about to speak against Wheatstock and Chaff, who both look on from the back. Woundwort tells Vervain they will attack both Hickory and Marigold. But, just as this is about to happen, Hickory announces that he is making Wheatstock Chief Rabbit. This is met by general cheering from the assembled rabbits and shock from Marigold. Vervain tells her to keep silent. Later on, above ground, Marigold warns Hickory about what he has done. He has made them prisoners. Hickory tries saying that they are being protected from external threats, so Marigold demonstrates the truth by trying to leave the warren. She is immediately leapt on by two Owsler, and Vervain, or rather Chaff, labels her a runner. Marigold is taken to join the digging crew that are building Wheatstock's new grand chamber. Hickory weakly tries protesting, but is told, as before, it is for the good of the warren, and, as before, he backs down. Redstone is now the new Ephrafa. On Watership Down, Gluck is teaching the young rabbits to spit cherry stones, and Hazel and Primrose aren't too happy about it. Keehar, defending Gluck, bad-temperedly asks what else rabbits don't do. Hazel has an idea. Bigwig, Hawkbit and Dandelion can teach her rabbit etiquette. However, the three of them say they'd love to, only they have a nest of stoats to clear out. Subtle. Keehar tells Hazel that his Gluck doesn't need lessons, and as they fly off to find fish, Hannah says to Hazel that they are now a package deal. At Redstone, Hickory is conducting his own investigation of a rabbit who has raided a carrot store. Vervain looks on as Hickory threatens to fetch Silverweed to look into the rabbit's mind to find out the truth. After Hickory lets him off with a warning, Vervain is curious about this Silverweed. Hickory explains that he is Cowslip's mystic at the Warren of the Shining Wires. He can see the truth and predict the future. As Hickory leaves, Vervain gets that look on his face as he says that is interesting. This one small event in this expansion of the Watership Down storytelling universe is going to have huge ramifications. Keehar and Gluck are swimming in a nearby stream. She confesses she is missing the delights of being a city gull, but she is prepared to adapt for Keehar. However, she is finding catching fish difficult. Raiding human rubbish is probably a lot easier. Keehaw looks sad about this. In Redstone Warren, Vervain arrives in Woundwart's newly finished chamber where he is sitting on his new podium. Vervain tells him he has news for his ears only. The slaves, including Marigold, are dismissed. However, she hides and listens to their conversation. Vervain suggests an evil plan to Woundwort. Cowslip has a mystic who is easily as powerful as Fiver. They should use him to defeat Watership Down. Kidnapping him will be difficult, Woundwort says, but Vervain's idea is simple. Trade the useless rabbits of Redstone for silverweed. There'll be no use for defeating Watership Down in any case, and Cowslip is still desperate for revenge. Also, I guess, any additional snare fodder will also always be welcome at Cowslip's Warren. Woundwort laughs at the idea of destroying Redstone in order to destroy Watership Down. Marigold hears all of this and is understandably shocked. On Watership Down, Gluck and Keehaw land, and Gluck embarks on a round of apologies for her behaviour. She does this, adopting what I think is a cliched attempt at a Londoner attempting a posh accent by inserting H's at the beginnings of as many words as possible. This may be lost on anyone for whom English is not their first language. Keehaw, however, is not having it. He says she is a generous, sweet, kind Gull who is perfect as she is. The rabbits of Watership Down look on without comment. Above ground at Redstone, Marigold runs up to Hickory and briefly warns him of Woundwart's plan, but Vervain is after her already. She says she needs to get help and asks Hickory to help her before running away, dodging an Owsla member. Vervain shouts "Runner" before being knocked to the ground by Hickory. And now Woundwort arrives. He swipes at Hickory, sending him flying. Looming over him, Woundwort demands to know what Marigold said. Hickory says she told him someone means to destroy Redstone, but that can't be true. Woundwort orders him taken away as Hickory asks what they have done. Finally, his naivety is being punctured. On Watership Down, Keehaw is explaining to Hazel and Hannah that Gluck cannot adapt to life on the Down. Keehaw can live anywhere, but not her. Hannah wonders what they will do without him. He tells Hannah that sometimes things change, but that his love for them will not, and offers her one last flight on his back. Marigold is running for her life, pursued by Woundwort and Vervain. She arrives at the roundabout where the Hoodadoos all have their headlights on as dusk is approaching. Just as Woundwort seems to have her cornered, she runs out in front of a Hoodadoo and is gone. As they return to Redstone, Woundwort says it has saved him the trouble. Vervain laughs. After a few seconds, we see Marigold safe on the other side of the roundabout. She says to herself that Frith gave her wings. On Watership Down, Keehaw gives a moving leaving speech. He is very grateful to the rabbits of Watership Down for all they have done for him. He adds that sometime he and Gluck will return with their babies. Hannah asks Gluck to look after him. She says she will. Keehaw says to Gluck that they will go home, meaning her home. As they fly away, he cries out his name one last time. Hannah sheds a tear and says there will never be another Gull like Keehaw. We will not see him again. Is it canon? As I said last week, seeing Woundwort take over a warren is an interesting aspect of the storyline that depicts directly what is only told as a past event in the novel. However, that is as close to canon as this episode gets. As for Keehaw and his new love ending up living in what we must assume is London, from time to time I have posted pictures on Facebook of black-headed gulls when visiting Peckham Rye Park in London. Perhaps some of them are the descendants of Keehaw and Gluck. Next time, the Watership Down TV series reaches its final act as we encounter the dreadful warren of Darkhaven.